Hey guys, welcome back to the BMW Blog podcast and welcome to a very special episode today. I've been trying to get Thomas with us for quite some time. I know they're quite busy. And if you haven't guessed by now, Thomas from Throttle House, the better half or the worst half of the team?
We'll let you decide. We'll see.
We're going to go with the better half.
Okay.
But
I
no,
like that. That sounds good to me, actually. Yeah.
That was a good intro. Well, I'm super excited to have you. Really, really appreciate you taking the time.
I'm glad to be here.
We'll try to go through a lot of topics today. So it might be fast paced, maybe a little bit more than our YouTube videos usually, but
sure.
Let's start with this. I mean, people know who you are by now, even though I just watched a recent episode. I think you were with Matt Farah and you were joking about how Gordon Murray didn't know who you were back in the day, you know, when you guys approached him. That was
oh no,
funny,
he still
actually.
doesn't know who we are.
He
That's not different. Yeah. He has no idea. He doesn't care.
So nothing has changed. So tell me more about you,
changed.
honestly.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a pretty apt podcast for me, right? Because BMW has been, inexorably linked to my world of cars, no matter what, right? I started doing all of this with an E46. I'm obsessed with BMW. I always have been. I'm a huge fan, and as a result, I think I'm quite a critique of the brand as well, or a critic. Sorry, a critic. I do critique the brand as well. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of pointed questions for me, and I'm very excited to tackle them. But look at you laughing already. He's like, "Oh, do I ever?" Yeah.
I do, because I feel like sometimes we kind of review their cars in a similar way. People think that, I'm a little subjective, but I'm really not. When I look at your videos, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I just said too, and it's I feel like we're on the same page with a lot of things. But honestly, let's start. So your E46, that was your, starting journey with the BMW brand. And then since I know you've been in love until recently with your F87 M2. So maybe we start with that question. First of all, why did you buy the F87 M2? And more specifically, why the N55 and not the S55?
Well, it was, James would always jump in and joke that it's because the M2 competition was more money, which is definitely partly a little bit, tiny bit true. And that is, that's definitely a thing, because I do love the M2 competition as well. But the original one for me was like, I don't know, it kind of, when that car came out, I definitely couldn't afford one. I saw everyone driving them. I got a chance to drive a DCT version of it, and I absolutely fell in love with it, because for me, it felt like if there was actually a successor, and this is old news, to the E46 M3, which is, I think, my favorite BMW, then that would be it, right? So the original one was the one that I always looked at and lusted over the most. And to be perfectly honest, I like the stock sound of the N55 more than the S55. And I like the seats, the basic seats, better than the competition seats. And I knew that I was going to use it as a daily. And I just, I thought it looked great. And also another thing too that I always forget about is that when you think about the original M2, you think about Long Beach blue. You think about that color because that's like the launch color, right? But when you think about the competition, you think about what is it, Alpine white? What's it called?
Alpine white, yeah.
Alpine white, yeah.
Hockenheim. I think it's
Hockenheim. Yeah. That's the one you think about, right? So and I really wanted the blue one. Whenever you see a competition in the blue, it looks a bit funny. Do you know what I mean? Right? But when you see the OG M2 in the Long Beach blue, you're like, that's the one I want. And that's just what I went with. Right? I really enjoyed it. There's also other little reasons here and there, but I don't know.
Yeah, so before we get to you selling the car, because that just happened recently,
yes.
Tell me what mods you felt like you had to add to the car to make it even better. Because I drove that car and it was definitely missing something, from the factory. I remember, long time ago driving that car on the track also.
Yeah, the OG M2 was definitely excellent but flawed. Right, they did improve it as the years went on, for sure, with the competition and the CS, obviously. But right off the bat, the suspension didn't quite work. There wasn't enough rebound damping, and there wasn't enough travel. Those are the two biggest issues, right? Yeah. So it kind of like chopped over the bumps in a really not nice way. Yeah, also, and no one really talks about this that much, there is a lot of wheel hop. There's a lot of wheel hop on, especially with the stock tire on launching. Like if you try and do a standing burnout, which of course I never did, it would go whoop, 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 and it would start the rear axle would start to hop, and it wasn't really that nice. And that's partly because, well, I believe it to be partly because the rear differential only has one mount, right?
Sure.
Which is kind of a strange choice by them. But I spoke to an
For sure.
engineer about it, and he assured me it was fine. I don't, I'm not an engineer. I don't necessarily agree because there was wheel hop, and it was because of the suspension tuning, right? So I put AST dampers on it, right? I originally went with and like for those that don't know, AST Moton is like their sister companies, and they make some of the best racing suspension of all time, right? They're used in like proper racing cars. I have Motons on my E46, and they absolutely changed the game. But I put the AST, like the three-way adjustable AST Motons on, and it made the road noise because they have solid top mounts really, really loud. This is like a thing for anyone who has an M2 and they're interested in modding it. I caution you very much just how much the stock top mounts on the suspension. This goes for a lot of BMWs actually. Just how much stock top mounts dampen road noise. Like it's incredible how much of a difference it makes. It will double or triple the highway road noise volume if you go to a solid top mount. That's actually for a lot of cars, but BMW specifically, I found that when you do that, it's really noticeable. So I went back to the one-way adjustable ASTs with that use the stock top mounts, and that was the perfect medium, right? Also,
Gotcha.
I lowered it, and it looked sick. So there was that as
It
well,
does,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
It really does. Honestly, I saw your farewell video, and I think the car looks fantastic. Honestly, the
yeah.
wheel choice was great too.
Yeah.
You've done a good job picking those wheels for that car, and just
Well, I
looks
just
so
copied the
so good.
CS. I just shamelessly copied the CS wheels because those Apex wheels are designed to look like the ones from the CS, right? Those are I think they're
Good.
called the VS5RS. I think that's the actual wheel. They're
Are they?
they're,
I'm not
they're
sure.
beautiful, absolutely
They're
stunning wheels,
beautiful.
and they weigh nothing. They're crazy. They're forged and they're
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 forged. Would you have picked the M2 CS if you had the choice?
I think so. I think I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really really like that car, and it felt extremely special. I think that will be of the that generation of M2, I think that one will always command a significant premium on the used market or at auction, right?
Yeah.
It was genuinely a
Really good.
fantastic car, one of my favorite things I've driven. It felt like it fixed every little problem, right? Um, and obviously it just looked so good. It looked so good. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, that car is fantastic. Honestly, I always lost over it. Every time I see one, I'm like,
yeah.
maybe I should sell my 1M and get this one. But then I go back, I'm like, maybe not.
I don't know, man. The 1M is such a good car. I drove one very very briefly. I've never like flogged one on a track or anything,
Mhm.
but I really wanted to at some point because it's such a great car, and that has the one thing that everything from the F87 forward is missing, and it's steering feedback, right? So
I was saying that the 1M is such an odd car. It's great in many ways, but also flawed in so many other ways. It doesn't make for a great daily driver, especially where I live. I live in Chicago. It's flat and the roads
yeah,
are not great, so it's not ideal. But once you hit some canyons or you go on the track, it really shines. But unfortunately, I don't do that enough. So this is why I'm always debating: should I get a better daily driver or not? But
right.
uh, I look at the car and I'm like, it's like a rare pair of sneakers. You can't just give it up for another shiny new thing. So
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and that's the one thing that the OG M2 was really good at was being a daily, and that's what I tried to tell people when I owned it. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is the car you drive every day." I'm like, "Well, yeah, because it just feels like a normal BMW. Like it's got all the tech. It's comfortable. It's not very loud on the highway. It's easy to drive. It's got good, backup cameras, and like it's just BMW has always done such a good job of blending those two things. But I think the blending of those two things, i.e., like sporty driving and everyday driving, I think is what made me decide to sell it in the end because I'm fortunate enough to not need to have one car that does everything right now. Right?
yeah,
I'm
which is
lucky. I
good. You
have
have
a
a truck,
driveway
right?
space. I've got a truck. I've got another kind of big, comfy family vehicle on the way, and then I've got some classic sports cars. Right? So like I have the luxury of being able to do both. But if I literally had only choice of one car, it would be something like the M2 for sure.
Interesting, very interesting. It's also interesting that you love the N55 because when the F87 M2 came out, everybody was like, "Oh, that's not an M engine. Oh my God, that's terrible. It's gonna suck." And then all of a sudden, it just everybody started to love the N55 over the S55. So to me, it's always interesting to hear from people that own the car.
Well, you see, interestingly, I'm not nearly as passionate about those two engines and their pitfalls or benefits, whatever, as
Hmm.
some people are. I think they're both great. And I actually, from the perspective of sitting in the cockpit, I think I like the S55 a little bit better. It just
Okay.
feels like it has, the two turbos trade off as you go up into the power band, and it feels a little bit more naturally aspirated. Feels like it has, I think it does have a higher red line. Does it? I think
It
it's a little bit
I think it
higher,
does a
right?
little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit more like you get to run it to the red line. And even though the noise in the cabin was fake, I enjoyed it just as much or more as the N55. But I mean, the thing is that car, the character of that car, I think, just the M2 generation in general, is about low end kind of grunty, snorty torque, right? Like that's what it was about.
Yeah.
So the N55 did that. It had that kind of snarling low end, like it'll break the rear tires loose at 3,000 RPM, right? Like
For sure.
that's kind of, I still like that character of it. I think that's what attracts me the most to the M2 gen is that kind of, if it had a naturally aspirated engine, I feel like it would just be a different car. It would feel like
Okay.
a totally different thing. What makes it cool is that character of it, that torque.
Yeah. So that leads us into the new M2. So I was going to save this for later on, but might as well, jump right into it right now.
Sure,
So
let's do it.
I guess we drove the car together in whatever was in Phoenix, Arizona, some really
Yeah,
interesting roads around there. And then your review comes out, and then the internet blows up pretty much, or at least the BMW internet blows up,
oh
all the
yeah, it
Beamer
did.
forums or Beamer post,
Oh yeah.
and essentially you become even more famous like you weren't before, and you hop in and you talk to people about the car. So I call this in our article the infamous Throttle House third gear test
Yep.
because
Yep.
people were like asking me, so how come you guys didn't experience the same thing? And I was like, well, you know, I think I kept the car mostly in the high RPM range, and that's why I
Yes.
wouldn't see that lag a little bit. But
Yep.
no, let's talk about this. Like, tell me, what was your first experience with the car, and especially compared to the M2 that you had, things that you like, things that you dislike, maybe.
Well, see, so that was the thing is that like as an M2 owner, and we were just talking about this 2 seconds ago, that punchy low end torque that the N55 had, and the S55 had it too. It was more prominent in the N55, in my opinion. But the way that the manual is geared in the newest M2, it's very out of the torque range completely in the lower RPMs, right?
Yeah,
And so that's what James was demonstrating in that moment of the video. And everyone obviously jumped on it. Who does that? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It was a demonstration. That was the purpose of it, is to show you that the engine feels very dead at those low RPMs
for
because of
sure.
that gearing, right? And I agree. If you are in the higher RPMs, the car is faster. It is objectively better. Doesn't sound worse or better in my opinion. Sounds about the same, right? So I have no problem with it from a performance perspective, but the idea was that the M2 is always such a great kind of like low RPM snarling like warthog of a car, right? It had that character of like being really spicy even at low RPMs because you just get this huge surge of boost and the whole thing. And so to me it felt it didn't have the same character, it didn't have the same approachability from a daily drivability perspective, right?
Mhm.
So if you're just kind of driving along and you're not wringing out the gears every single time,
Mhm.
the car felt a little bit lifeless to me, right?
Yeah.
And that's and I think what we ended up doing, did we compare it directly? I think I found I don't think we ever published this, but I went out when we got back. This is when the whole thing was happening. I was talking to people on the forums. I went out and I filmed my M2. Did this go in the video? I don't even remember. I
I don't
filmed my
remember that one.
M2
Okay.
from 2000 RPM or 3000 RPM, whatever it was, in the
Mhm.
same gear, and you could literally see the difference in torque down there. It was so
Mhm.
obvious, and so that's the thing that I was pointing out. I mean, this is among many other things about the new M2, including the styling,
Yeah.
right? But just kind of like as a whole package, that car wasn't and isn't still what I would prefer. And I know that Chris Harris
What do you think is
vehemently
missing?
disagrees with me.
Yeah.
But I just had lunch
Yeah,
with
he
Chris
actually does.
Harris.
He actually loves the car, right? He
He
actually loves
loves
the
the
car, if I
car. I
remember.
just
Yeah.
I just had lunch with Chris Harris when I was in England, and I told him to his face, I don't think he's right.
But what do you
So,
think it's missing?
well, first of all, it's missing a front end that I actually enjoy looking at. So there's that.
Yeah.
But I mean, from a like a track driving perspective, when you are up in the revs and you are sliding the car around, it's brilliant. It's definitely better than the old one, no question, right? But for me, that car was about being able to enjoy it all the time, every day, right? And the OG M2 had, as I said, more of a snarling low end character. It was a little bit more approachable from lower revs, so it felt really zesty all the time, right? Which I really enjoyed about it. So yeah, the new one just didn't quite do that for me. The added weight, you don't really notice it, I will admit, until you are under braking or you're doing a lot of laps and you start to account for heat being added to brake systems and that sort of thing, right? Then you start to notice the weight. But BMW engineers are so good at what they do that car was unbelievable. It's so quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, primarily, this is just an opinion. I don't like the way it
Yeah.
looks, and I can't
Yeah.
get over it. I've tried so many times to get over it, but I can't, because half of what makes the OGM2 so interesting to me is that, like, it sat outside my window for a couple years at my house, and I would just literally look out the window at it. I'd go, look, it just looks so damn good, right? The proportions are
Yeah.
perfect. Also, if you want to get into the
Agree.
nitty gritty of it, there's less headroom in the back now in the new generation,
Yeah, I think
right?
it's got
That's
more
true for the new
coupage
2
roofline. They
Series.
decided to make it even more coupage than it was before, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Like, you could fit a full-grown adult, not easily, but you
Hmm.
could technically fit a full-grown adult in the back seat of the OGM2, and you can't in the new one. That to
Yeah,
me
for sure.
is an error in packaging, right?
Yeah.
So, also the steering's worse. It's worse. It just is. Like, the OGM2 had better steering feedback. So there you go. Those are my main reasons. Again, it's not a bad
No,
car.
no,
But
no, I mean, you're
here's the
absolutely
thing though
right.
about BMWs, if you just made that thing absolutely stunning, if it was just gorgeous, every proportion was great, it didn't have anything too avant-garde, which is what
Yeah.
they're doing now.
Hmm.
Well, I'm the lead designer has now moved to Rolls-Royce. I'm sure we'll chat about that in a second. But the I think if it had all that, I would overlook a lot of the other stuff, just because
Hmm.
desirability trumps so many other things, right?
For sure. I agree on that. I mean, honestly, I know both designers really, really well. Known them for a long time, actually. And every time I see one or the other, I always tell them that the other car is the better looking car, just to annoy them a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
But they have
Exactly.
different philosophies, so I
Yeah.
get it. I guess the times when the F87 was done, I just wrote a story on it with my team, or we said, it was back in the day when the F generation was there. Every car was more like, same sausage, different length, and they were like softer and all of that. And then they decided to go this direction, which is arguably bolder and everything else. It's fun because I was reading some forums also the other day on different topic, and people were like, oh, the M2, it's aging well. And I'm like, I don't know, let's see in 10, 15 years how that's going to age.
No, it isn't. No,
But
it's
yeah, it's
not. it's not aging. I'm sorry. It
it's
just
a,
it
it's
just
a
like when you so obviously the two main designers, Chris Bangle and Dom. How do you say his first name?
Domagoy.
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 Okay, that makes sense,
Domagoy.
because, like, it's no way
Yeah.
it's the way it's spelled. Like, those two designers are known for doing the two eras of BMW that are the most, like, polarizing, I said, avant-garde, different, right? But right now, if I asked anyone what the best looking 7 Series of all time is, what do you think they're going to say?
Probably going to say the Bengal Blood, huh?
No, they're
No?
not.
No, I'm probably going to say the E39, maybe. Not the
They're going to say
E39,
the
I'm thinking
E38. The E38.
the E38, yeah.
Exactly, right? They're
Yeah,
they're going to say that, that was in Tomorrow Never Dies. It's
yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
gorgeous. It's timeless. And I'm sorry, for me, what makes a good car design is something that's pretty, something that isn't too polarizing, something that will transcend generations, right? So when you
Yeah,
look back on it, you go, it doesn't matter what perspective you're looking at, that is, in this case, objectively good looking. There are such things as proportions that make stuff pleasing to the eye. If you want to get into the, 1.618 ratio, right? Like, there are things in the natural world that we enjoy looking at and things that we don't enjoy looking at as human beings. instinctually.
Yeah.
So for me, good car design is something that, as I said, will transcend whatever trend we currently are at, right? Anything that's too trendy or too polarizing, it just almost always doesn't last. There's so many exceptions to that in the history of car design, of course, right?
Yeah.
Like things that were like, well, that's really, really different. But then, over time, people are like, that's actually beautiful. But I just don't think that the new M2 is going to be one of those things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's people expected a facelift on it. I don't think it's going to be one, at least not for a long time. And then the
Yeah.
M2 CS, of course, that's just going to bring some CS bits, so nothing major. We're not going to see a major change. But
No.
staying with the with the BMW design, I think you nailed it, and I think that's the same thing with the XM, because we drove the XM on that trip as well. And granted, the car, it's not bad. I think, and I'm gonna just lead with this. I think the design could have been better for sure. I mean, even though I'm not a designer. And then secondly, like you said in your video as well, they should have not named this car an XM. They should just name it an X8, whatever, hybrid.
Yeah.
Because overall, the car, it's not bad aside from suspension and the design and all of that. But what was your take on the XM? Because honestly, it's the most polarizing BMW today, and probably the car that got the most hate.
Can we swear on this podcast?
You can if you want to.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can bleep it if you want. The XM is a piece of that car is genuinely start to finish an absolute disaster, and BMW should be completely embarrassed by it. From every single measurable perspective, it was the ride is crap. The interior doesn't make nearly as much sense as it could. The packaging makes no sense. The marketing is idiotic. The use of the M badge is stupid. The absolute bastardization of the history of M in that car is so insulting to me as a BMW person that I can't stand it. I don't think it has any. And guess what? They're not selling. Like,
They're
no
not.
shit, they're not selling, right? Because they're not actually that good. They look stupid, and they're not nice to drive, right? Yes, it's very quick, but it isn't that quick for what it should be.
It's a heavy car, such a heavy
right?
car. And
It's
honestly,
way too heavy. And they're not selling, right? Like the fact that there's a whatever Dolce and Gabbana handbag in the back, that just, oh God, it just tells me everything you need to know about who they're trying to capture with that car and how far they are from actually. I don't know if you were at that launch, right?
I was there.
Do you remember? Did you ever go to BMW launches like 5-6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I've
there
been there for
were
15 years. Yeah, so
there were always discussions about engineering, and there were discussions about the details of the performance, and there were discussions about, like, you could ask questions like how many degrees of camber are on the front wheels, and they would have answers. That particular launch for the XM and the M2, all of it was about who they're marketing it to, and the image and the design and the artwork, and like just a bunch of crap that I don't care about, right? So like from start to finish, the whole thing was set up to be a disaster. And when I really pressed the engineers, I won't, they told me a few things that I won't repeat because they told me in confidence, obviously. But there's definitely an element of what can I say? It's an element of they knew what that car was and what it wasn't. If that makes any sense, the XM.
it does, because honestly, I got the same feedback off the record since. I think they misread the market. I think they misread a little bit of drivetrain. They should have been in their car, a little bit of the design and everything else. So definitely it's a flop in my opinion too. That's why they're removing that 650 horsepower variant, and they're going to stick to the high end, whatever 740, and then the entry level in Europe, which is the 6 hybrid, which is probably even more strange. But they absolutely misread. And my biggest thing with that car was like, okay, I get it. You can't have all winners. It's fine. It was the fact that it was the 50 years of M, and I felt like they should have done something very, very, very special for 50 years of M. And they keep telling me, yeah, we did a 3.0 CSL. I'm like, okay, that's not that special. And it's $750,000 and you can't even buy it here. So that was my biggest thing. I'm like, we should have done something. And I'm not talking about a supercar. People think that, that we all want supercars. Like, not really. I just want, like, I don't know, M2 CSL, M something CSL, something. I don't know, something.
Yeah, we got the M4 CSL, which was a wild car. But I agree with you that I think for the 50 years of M, that was a massive misread of the BMW world, the community, and the people who actually support the brand over time, as opposed to the people who have a lot of money, go to the nearest dealership, they cross shop between Mercedes and BMW. They like this one a little bit better because it's quicker or whatever. They make more noise, and then they buy that. They don't care about the brand or the history or anything, right? for the people who actually care, I think, you say it shouldn't have been a supercar. I think it should have been an M1 thing, right? It should have been something like that. It should have been something, it can cost $300,000. I don't care, but make a mid-engined, proper road-going successor to the M1. That's what I think that should have been. And how would there not be a market for that? How would there not be a market? Like, for sure, like, there's so many people these days spending incomprehensible amounts of money on one-off supercars and hypercars. Imagine if you did like a cool retro throwback M1 thing. You don't even have to put a fancy engine in it. Just because the original M1 had a straight six, put the S58 in it or whatever the hell you got, right? S50, and make it super fast, make it really, really light, make it, Anyway, there's my rant.
Yeah, I think they misread the market. I think they were chasing the Lamborghinis and all of that, and that's just a flop. And unfortunately, I think they realize that now, even though, of course, they're not going to say it. But on the more positive side of things, tell me, what would be your favorite BMW if you were to buy one today? If money no object, or you can even pick more than one if you want to, because it might not be the only
money no object.
Money, no object.
That's actually a really difficult question.
People ask me that all the time. That's why I know it's a difficult question. There's so many.
Yeah, I think honestly, I really do like the M1. I've never driven one, but I think it's got a really interesting history, right? Sure. I think it's just absolutely unbelievably good looking. And since, as I said, my current position is that I have a big driveway and a couple spots in the garage, I would probably get one that I don't have to drive every day, right? So I would get something, like an M1 would be horrible to drive every day, obviously. Yeah. So that's probably what I would do. But I mean, outside of that, I think probably an E46 M3 CSL. I'd bring one of those in.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't have the right transmission, blah, blah, blah. But I just think it's so cool.
You can do a swap on it. I guess some people that on swaps on.
Yeah, you can. E46 Otherwise, M3. I think I would do an absolutely pristine showroom condition Laguna Seca Blue E46 M3 manual coupe. Right.
Icon staples. Honestly, amazing color, amazing car. It's actually my first BMW also was an E46. It was not an M3, but it was just a regular 3 Series, and I still like that car. Yeah. Just timeless, like you said, especially when you pair it with either Laguna Seca or Phoenix Yellow or whatever, it's just fantastic car. So awesome. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit, and we'll get back to BMW at the end. Tell me more about YouTube, right? So we're in the same space doing content creation, and honestly, it's fair to say that most of us look up to you today. I mean, your videos are at a different level than anything else out there. I mean, of course, I know Jason Camisa quite well. I've known him for a very long time, and I love talking with Jason and all of that. And he does a fantastic job, but his production level is completely different, right? I mean, he's got a huge backing from Haggerty, and it's easy to do. Let me take it back. It's not easy to do things, but it helps quite a bit when you have that much budget and you can do planning and all these days. But tell me, how is it for you? So I've seen the progression of your channel, the last few years, and tremendous, production levels right now. And I even call you in the BMW circles like the top gear of the new generation, and just for YouTube, basically. So tell me, what did it take for you to get here and what you've learned along the way?
Well, I think, to be fair, what it did take for us to get here is time, right? Because currently the level of production that you see is, I believe to be, based on as much knowledge as I can amass, I think it's the highest quality car review production you can do at the rate that we do them. Does that make any sense?
It does. Yeah.
Like we could do higher production stuff. We could do, I want to say that we could produce something that is similar to what Jason's doing with his Icons stuff, right? Yeah. But we don't, they have a different model, right? Theirs is, and I love watching his stuff, but they take 4 or 5 days to film them and months to edit them, right? We almost every single episode you see is filmed in a day. Sometimes 2 in a day, and then we can turn them around in a week. So with those restrictions, it was only time that enabled us to create the production value that we have, right? So Karsten and Dan are our editors and filmmakers, and Harrison our sound guy. We are constantly learning, right? and every day I'm thinking about, so well, James and Joey, our production manager, are focused primarily on what's the next video and how do we make that happen from a producing perspective. My focus is more with the production side of the team, and how can we essentially hone the craft, right? How can we get all the gear that we need? How can we put it in the least number of packages so that we can bring it all with us to God knows where around the world? And how do we, perfect our editing workflow so that we can create the highest quality possible thing in the smallest amount of time? So, and as I said, we're constantly learning. Like literally this morning, I was looking at lenses for one of our Sony cameras because I'm like, okay, so that would enable us to do those types of kind of zoom shots that we do for the office style comedian things, but in a smaller package for traveling on the road. Like, so as technology changes in the camera world, we're constantly evolving and adapting to how can we use the current technology to be more efficient when we make our videos, right? And then all in between that, so in amongst the actual technical side of production and the production side of like planning the videos, James and I spend every other moment essentially trying to figure out how to make the actual video and the narrative the best we possibly can in the amount of time that we have. So that's writing the jokes and the sketches and coming up with the narrative arc and researching the history of the car to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make it the most entertaining thing in that amount of time. And that's what we love doing the most, is that part of it, right?
Gotcha.
So that's it.
So do you co-write together, or
Yeah,
one of you takes the lead? Yeah.
Yeah. Almost every single video, James and I are on the phone on a Google Doc and figuring out, what can we do differently? How can we elevate this video a little bit? Sometimes we don't have time to do that, and then we just do the best we can with the time we have. How can
who's the funniest of you two?
What's that?
Who's the funnier of the you two? If you were
probably James. But
James, yeah?
so you have to understand, James's humor is toy out there. So
Right.
so he'll you can kill me for saying that, but he'll come up with something. I'll go like, yeah, but what if we made that so that everyone would understand it?
Reel back a little bit.
But no, for sure, he's the one that
fun.
comes up with most of the kind of like ridiculous ideas, and then between the two of us, we mold them into something that I think, as I said, we realized years ago what Throttle House is the intersection between his brain and my brain, essentially. I mean, in terms of the videos and what's in them, right? So, we butt heads constantly, right? We're constantly shouting at each other and arguing
You
about
have
it.
to,
Like in the aggregate, we create what you see, I think.
Awesome. So, to piggyback on what you said before, is there a need though to even elevate even more your production levels? Because I struggle with this on my side, just to, or as a side note, that I look at the other YouTubers, plenty of them, and I interview some of them, and I know some of them, and they have no production values yet. They're very, very successful because the content itself, the story maybe, or the things that they relate to people are informative and interesting. So do you think it's going to help you go to the next level by being like an icon, like Haggerty's icon, or you don't even need to get there to have this success?
No, I don't think I don't. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about like different strategies and what we could pivot to and what we could do. But I mean, what we're doing is, like, I don't want to say we're stuck in our ways or anything, but what we're doing is working. I think people like it. They see it as like a bit of a TV show that they can watch every week, or however fast we can produce them. And yeah, I don't know. As you said, there are a lot of people who have been massively successful with much less production value. We just chose to go down that route because there's a lot of YouTubers that do such a brilliant job with one camera, one angle, and then one GoPro, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because if you're an audience member and that's what you want to see, you just want to see this person just talking about a thing that they're interested in, then that's what you're in for. But right, but we think maybe, I suppose, you come to a Throttle House video because you want some of that, but you also want maybe some like silly jokes and maybe some really good sound capture of the car, right? We spend a lot of time trying to kind of capture what the car is like to drive, what it sounds like, what it exactly, because we're lucky enough to drive some insane cars. And like, I remember what it's like to be the person who doesn't get to drive those cars. right? So like I don't ever want to lose sight of that, and I don't think I have, because my goal is to always say, how do I show people who might not ever get to see one of these cars in real life what it's like to drive, or what it's like
Mhm.
to be near, or what it's like to listen to or to see, right? So that's why we put such a high emphasis on video quality, sound quality, right? Like the amount of money we spent on sound capture is embarrassing.
Really? Is it really?
Our microphones are extraordinarily expensive, right? Just because I want to go like, what does that sound like? How can we
Mhm.
reproduce that on video? Because we want, like, perfect
Very
example
cool.
is the Tuthill 911K, that
Okay.
11,000 RPM Porsche,
Yeah.
right?
So idea.
Like
Amazing.
there's so few of those in the world,
Hmm.
right? So for me, like, first of all, driving that was an unbelievable privilege. It
Looked
still is
amazing.
blowing my mind to this day. And so I made sure that particular video, we made sure that particular video was something that people were like, you know what, this is worth putting on the big screen with the good speakers, right?
Mm.
Because that car is such a okay, an oral experience,
All experience.
AURL, oral, and so we wanted to make sure we captured it as best as possible, because you're probably never going to get to hear one from inside the cabin, right? They're so rare and they're millions of
Exactly.
dollars. So that's kind of our goal.
Gotcha. So aside from production value, what do you think differentiates you from any other YouTube channels? You know, single, dual presenters. I mean, there's so many different formats these days, and I feel like at some point there might be an overload, you know,
Maybe.
of typical channels, because we have the same thing in the news world. You know, channel websites doing kind of the same thing, and I keep talking about that. But what do you think differentiates you from all the others?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think, like, James and I suppose what might feel different is that James and I put a very high emphasis, sorry,
Emphasis.
what's the word? Very high,
Yes. Emphasis.
emphasis. Jeez, what
Emphasis.
is my coffee number 2 is coming up.
So,
Very
I haven't
high
had one yet.
emphasis on making the videos funny,
Yeah,
right? Making them fun.
for sure.
Not that there's lots of car channels there's some hilarious car channels out there that I enjoy
No,
watching as
yours
well.
are the funniest by far. I
But
can tell you that right now.
I don't know. Sometimes we write jokes and we're like, this is so ridiculous. No one is going to find this funny except us.
Mhm.
And like sometimes, honestly, the comments are like, "That was a bit of a weird one, guys," and we're like, "Okay, that's that we saw that coming." But I mean, it seems like people they tend to jive with our brand of humor. So I mean, that's good, because we are genuinely just going out and having fun, making a bunch of jokes, and putting it on the internet and hoping for the
Mhm.
best, right? So that's just
Yeah.
it is what it is, right? We're not.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't actually know the answer to that fully, but
Okay.
I think maybe it's just like the audience can really tell when you're not actually having fun,
Mhm.
right? And we are
Yeah.
actually having a good time. Like, we go, this the small team, there's a small group of us, we travel around and we make jokes and we
Yeah.
just have a good time. That's I think the core of it.
And the thing with jokes is that you can't ever please everyone, right? And I've
Of
learned this
course
from
not.
Jason Camisa also. You know, I mean, I met him before he was doing YouTube and all of that, and he was always a super funny guy and didn't really have a filter, didn't care, and you always said, you know, that you're not going to be able to please everyone, so just put your creative spin on it,
Yep.
you know, and whatever you think it's great, and then most of the people will get it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Your brand of humor is your brand of humor, right?
Yeah,
If you try too hard to be someone else's brand of humor, it'll be obvious, I guess,
exactly. Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So,
You will come out that way. Now, tell me, I got a couple of other questions regarding any misadventures that happened during filming that you could share, and also maybe a funny story, something
um,
that you haven't told before. Maybe I've seen
interesting.
some in your videos, but maybe something that we have not seen in the videos.
There was, I won't, in terms of a misadventure, I won't say who
Misadventure.
it was, where it was, or what
It's
car it
fine.
was, but one of us hit a deer. Um, to a this is like sad. This is even funny. This is sad.
Dear.
We hit the deer. The deer was we got it. The
Yeah,
deer got
that's
very hit and it went flying, and we felt
uh,
extremely bad. And that kind of shut the day down a little
uh,
bit.
yeah,
And
that's
again, I won't say
nobody
where
got
that was or
hurt
what
in the
car it was.
car.
Um, but yeah, in terms of like, there's always some sort of thing that happens on a shoot day that is an obstacle you have to overcome, right? So it's like almost every single day we'll have something, you'll have the day where for some reason every single camera battery decides that it wants to power a camera for 5 minutes tops, right? You'll go like, why are we out of batteries now? Or we'll forget something, or some crucial piece of equipment will break, or a car will overheat. That's happened plenty of times. Well, we did put that in one video, the pure Sangway overheated, right?
Yeah.
And so then and you get to that point, and since we're very kind of fly by the seat of our pants, we don't have any backup for production. We have the car for a day most of the time. So if the car breaks halfway through the day, James and I look at each other and we're both thinking the same thing: is, do we have enough to actually make a video here? Like, how do we? And then sometimes we'll have to like recraft the narrative, or we'll have to write a different thing. Sometimes we have no choice but to tell exactly what happened and make it part of the story. But yeah, like that's usually the way it goes. Is we do put a lot of stress on the cars that we film, obviously, because to get all of that B-roll, right? Like if you see 15 drive-bys in a video, we drove that car flat out 15 times past the camera and then hit the brakes and did a U-turn, right? That puts a lot of heat into the car. So, we do very much test the cars. So by the end of a day, we know what cars have the good engineering behind them. Do you know what I mean? To actually be properly good cars. And Tesla very, very often comes out at the bottom of that when it comes to how much stress you can put on a car before everything just starts to fail. Yeah.
I hear you. Let me pivot to something a little bit more serious, because it's a question that I sometimes get. First of all, do you call yourself a YouTuber, content creator, journalist? How would you describe yourself?
I'd like to say that we're automotive journalists first, right? Because I mean, behind all of the jokes and the production value and all of that stuff, we take the automotive journalism side of it extremely seriously, right? So we'll always deliver a piece of automotive journalism with a joke included in it because we want you to stay interested in what we're saying. But when it comes to our conclusion on a car, it's not just a slapdash decision, right? It's something that's extremely based in every other car that we've driven, where that car fits in the price category, that segment of car, what's coming, what's past. We take all of that into account very carefully, and that's usually done when James and I write the voiceover, right? So especially the voiceover at the end, the conclusion, we sit down and we go like, okay, what else is available? Where does this car actually stand? What's our final thoughts on it? How do we feel about after a week has gone by? Because sometimes you get like doe eyes when it comes to a car, and you want to look past your initial emotional reaction to it to actually see, what it means for the automotive landscape. But yeah, we take the journalism side of it very clearly, very seriously, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I explained that quite a bit in podcasts as well. Sometimes I can do it in writing or in videos, but it's not all the cars that I drive or all the BMWs that I drive, they're my style. Like I will never probably own a 7 Series because I'm not your typical 7 Series customer, probably will never be. So when I review cars like that, I need to put my hat on that, okay, I'm a 7 Series customer. What would I look at this car? I could care probably less at that point about the driving dynamics, and I care more about luxury and features in the car.
Of course.
So it's something that it's not easy. But on that note, this question actually came from somebody on our Discord. I asked yesterday, hey, do you have any questions for Thomas? And said, why should people trust, not specifically yours, but, YouTubers and content creators' diagnosis or evaluation of a vehicle? Why should people trust us?
Just if for no other reason than for the fact that we are probably some of the few people out there that have had the fortunate reality of being able to drive all the cars, right? Yeah. So not very many people have properly test driven all the sports cars or whatever in a segment of sports cars. So like if you're looking in the $100,000 price category, there's a decent number of cars. We've probably driven all of them, right? So that's the one thing. Like you as a viewer, you get to know the different journalists that you watch, what their likes, their personal dislikes are, what potentially biases they might have. And you as a viewer, you take that the same way that you would with anybody, right? Like
Yeah.
you know what Chris Harris likes and doesn't like, you know what Jeremy Clarkson likes and doesn't like, right?
Mhm.
So when he comes to a conclusion about a car, you know, okay, well, Jeremy probably wasn't going to like that car anyway because of X. So every reviewer will have that to some degree, but you know, the goal of us as a journalist is to have as little of that as humanly possible, right? So whenever we evaluate a car, we always evaluate it based on, as you said, like the market, what that buyer would want for that car, what else is available in that price category, right?
Mhm.
So again, you don't have to trust us as a viewer. You don't. You feel free to go test drive every single one of the cars and read your own research and do your own investigation into the reliability of that engine or whatever it is. But if you're looking for a quick answer on something, you watch people like yourself or like us because we've just driven all of them, right? So we
Yeah.
can say this one has better steering than that one. This one makes a better noise than that one.
Mhm.
Again, a lot of it's subjective,
Yeah.
but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think you nailed it because I always tell people that we're kind of the starting point in their buying journey or in the buying funnel, however you want to call it. That you do your initial research, you watch as many videos as you want, you read articles, and then you still have to go and kind of make up your own mind, right? I mean, it's like people ask me, what color should I get for my car? I'm saying, I don't know. It's such a personal
No.
choice. You got to go see them, got to go experience them in different ways. But yeah, you absolutely nailed that. The other misconception that I often see online, not just on our channels, but all over, is the fact that if we say something negative about a car, we get in trouble with OEMs and we get banned and all of that. And even though I'm fully aware that it sometimes happens, not too often from what I know. What's your experience with that? Have you got in trouble with any OEMs for things you've said?
Um, yes, we have for sure. We have gotten in trouble for
To what
sharing.
level? Like you had a conversation, because I have a conversation about it too. When I say, okay, here is why I said these things, and here is why I think I'm right.
Yes.
From my perspective, but not to the point that we'll say, oh, we're gonna ban you because you said this and did this. That's never happened to me.
I more often than not, it's what you said. Usually, when I say usually, I say for the most part, most of the PR reps and the manufacturers are understanding of a negative review as long as you have a good reason for it or you can back it up with you say like, well, that great, but this other manufacturer for less money does that thing better,
Mhm.
right? That's just evidence. That's all
Sure.
that is, right? As long as you have that, then you're usually fine. But we get ourselves in a lot of hot water because of the jokes that we make, I think. So yeah, when it comes to like the journalism side, everything is protected, but sometimes in order to get a point across to the general audience, we'll use a little bit of edgy humor sometimes to just to
Mhm.
just to just to get a rise out of people, and that often makes them a bit mad. And we haven't been fully blacklisted, but there are manufacturers that won't give us cars right now because of what we've
Interesting.
said in a review. There's one supercar manufacturer, I won't say who they are, who we did a review of their car, and we were just straight up honest about it. We said, here's what broke when we had it. This didn't work for the entire duration of that. This screw
Mhm.
fell out into my hand, blah, 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 blah. And they were none too pleased that we did that. So we don't have any of those cars anymore. And that's just the way it is. But over time, time heals all wounds. I'd
For
like
sure.
to I'd like to hope. But yeah, that's just, as you say, for the most part, as long as you're fair, uh, you will not get, banned or blacklisted. You have to,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
and
push
I'm
the
glad that you
boundaries.
mentioned this because a lot of times people say, hey, if you don't say this, you're not going to invite you to press launches and all of that. And I keep telling people, okay, press launches are cool. I've when I started, I don't know, 15 years ago, it took me a very long time to be invited to one. It was a
Yep.
different landscape back then,
Yep.
and I still survived and thrived and all of that. So you don't have to really go to this to create content. And that kind of leads into my next question. Do you prefer to attend press launches, or do you get more value by getting the car at home for a week and do your content
Yes.
creation? Because when we go to those launches, as you know, M2 and XM, there is so little time to do anything, and you got to drive and film and do all of that.
The issue with launches is that we just, because of our production value, we don't have enough time usually. A lot of the manufacturers are very accommodating to that, but some of them aren't as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, we prefer to have the car at home. But like, yeah, just going back to your point there about not being invited to press launches, that's not true. You won't just get banned from press launches if you say something bad about a car. Absolutely false. I want to put that to rest right now,
Yeah.
right? As I said, like if
Exactly.
you have a good reason for your criticism on a vehicle, you're still
Mhm.
going to get invited to press launches, right? But if you're
Exactly.
like, this car is crap, and you don't give
Yeah.
any reasons, they're going to be like, okay, he's not useful, or they're not useful to us. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, there's this like belief that if you get wined and dined at a press launch, you have to say something nice. That is just absolutely not true. It
It's
just
not.
isn't, right?
It's not. It's really
And
not. Like, yeah.
yeah, so anyone who thinks that, it's just not true. It just
Yeah.
isn't, right? You have to do
I'll,
something
yeah.
really stupid like what we do occasionally to get in a lot of trouble, right?
Let's just say that I've done crazy things where I damaged cars back in the day and I was still invited. I felt bad about it and it hasn't happened, but
Yeah.
I still got invited. Mistakes happen and all of that. But
Yep.
on the previous point, like I'll give you my example from the XM trip. But the product manager for the XM, she's a friend. I've known her, for a while, even before the XM project. And, I think we're on the last wave and the embargo expired and we're having dinner with them basically. Oh, it's the embargo expires. Everybody was reading our reviews and all of
Yeah.
that. And I remember printing mine because the video didn't come out yet. And clearly I was at the same table. They were reading my review, which was not positive on the XM. And he felt odd, but she didn't, I mean, nobody came up and said, hey, why did you like it? Just, it is what it is because you can't. I always tell people, if you're constantly subjective about a car, doesn't matter if you cover just one brand or multiple brands, then when you write something objective, nobody will actually believe you. So the OEMs know that, right? I mean, they know that you got to be objective in order to be valuable to them as well, because otherwise you're just going to go from one side to another. You're subjective, now you're objective, now you're not. So it's a fine line that even OEMs, they acknowledge that you have to keep to be objective in order to be valuable to them.
Yeah. No, of course, that's absolutely true, right? And they know that the more honest you are about a vehicle, the more trust the audience has in you, and the more value a positive review is,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's just the reality of it.
And to finish on this topic with press launches and all of that, there is also this conversation that I often have, and I was going to ask you about this too. Do you feel like, is there any advantage today to go live first with a YouTube video? Because back in the day, it was like this struggle. We got to go first with this video, and I feel like you don't, especially in your case. You guys do such high value production, and even if 50 videos go live before you can still get more views if you go live a week after.
Yeah, we don't actually know the answer to that question because we've had some success doing both,
Both,
right?
okay.
So we don't really know. I think I just like my gut says err on the side of being the first to a thing is going to be better. But sometimes it's better to release it after a couple weeks have gone by and people have had a chance to digest the car. I think it depends car to car, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
is depending on people's perception going into a new vehicle is,
Mhm.
and then what the reviewers might say will change how excited or not excited they are for a car. So
Mhm.
again, I think it's probably situational.
Yeah.
And I also don't know the idea after this many years. I don't know what makes the most sense. I don't.
So, it's a final question on the YouTube, so content creation topic. Then we'll switch back to cars a little bit because we don't have that much time. But one of my guys sent me this, and they said, with Grand Tour now over, with the three big presenters, do you feel like you're carrying their torch to a new generation of car enthusiasts?
Um, I don't think anyone could carry their torch. They
To a
are
certain level, I guess. Yeah.
they're so unique in the way that they change things and who they are, right? So yeah, no, I don't. It's very flattering to hear that, obviously, but I like to think that we are who we are and they are who they are, right?
Mhm.
And that's just the reality of it. The truth is that if you do comedy and cars together, you get compared to Clarkson, Hammond, and May.
For
That's
sure.
just the because they
Yeah, they're
kind of invented it,
they
right?
did.
So and that's fine and that's okay. Comparisons are comparisons, and if that makes people uh happy when they're watching us, or it fills or gives them the same kind of type of joy that they got watching them, then we're happy to provide that, basically.
Gotcha. Switching back to cars. So you ordered the Lotus Emira a while back, and I watched that video quite a bit because I was debating what should be my next fun car, aside from BMW cars. And I was debating the topic of a Porsche Cayman GTS GT4, and then I saw you talking about these two cars quite a bit. So why did you pick, for example, Lotus Emira over any other similar cars, even though they're not that many?
Um, well, it's different enough that it's not a Porsche, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of those out there.
I got one in my
And
garage now.
also from just a straight up driving engagement perspective, the Amiro is just more fun. It's just more fun,
Okay,
right? Steering is better. It's got a manual transmission, right? Like, it's just a fun car. It's also so good looking,
it is good looking.
and that does carry a lot of weight, right? But,
Yeah.
we had to cancel our order, right? Because it just took
Oh,
too
did you?
long.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good
yeah, yeah.
news to me.
We canceled it. We had it on order for like
Ah,
a
I know
year
it's
and a
been a while.
half, almost
Yeah.
2 years before they're
Oh,
like, we might actually have one to give you now. And we're like, okay. Like from a business perspective, it didn't make any sense for us to spend the money on it, which is so sad, right? Because we were so excited about taking delivery and then driving it across the country and doing like a whole bunch of videos on it to share it. But by the time we actually got around to getting ours, Harry's garage had driven his to Saint Tropez or whatever he went, and then all the way back, and then made a couple videos, and then sold it, right?
yeah,
So like the for us, like the news cycle of it, I guess was over,
it was over.
which was just kind of frustrating. But and we looked at it and we're like, okay, we bought two cars for a new road trip, which we're filming right now, so we're all kind of
Awesome.
lacking in driveway space. So we're just like, maybe we'll just wait on that one.
Gotcha. Is there a similar car that you're eyeing for the future?
Me personally, I think, yeah, like a Lotus Elise, like a
It is
Series
okay.
2 Lotus Elise, right? I think
Hmm.
I'd love to have one of those when they're very expensive for what they are, but we just released a video on one this week or the other day, and
Okay,
I
I
just
haven't
had
seen.
so much fun driving it. I just had so much fun driving it. It's such a palate cleanser, that car. So yeah, as I said, like
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to be able to do, truck and sports car,
Hmm.
right, in the same driveway, as opposed to the M2, which kind of filled both duties.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get to go more extreme with the sports car experience. So I don't know what it is. If I put another sports car in the driveway, it will be something like an Elise, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. So Sean, my co-host from PSI, sent me this question also earlier today. He said, "What is the best current restomod you have driven, and are the larger names worth the money from a driver feedback and enjoyment level?"
Um, we haven't driven all of the Restomods. We still haven't driven a Singer. We still
Okay,
haven't
you have
driven
not. Okay,
the Cyan P1800, that Volvo, which is very
hmm,
cool. But we've driven the Evo 37.
okay,
That thing was pretty crazy. I
cool.
really enjoyed that.
Hmm.
And obviously the Alphaholics GTR 290 and the Tuthill 911K. My favorite is the Alphaholics that
Okay,
I've driven. It's such a special car to me, and it is just such a lovable thing, and it was brilliant to drive. But the best, I guess, would be the Tuthill 911K, just because that engine is
yeah,
completely
ridiculous.
otherworldly.
Yeah, it sounded
Yeah.
ridiculous in a video too. I can only imagine in real life.
Oh, it's beyond belief performance and fear,
Yeah,
basically.
unbelievable. Now, on the BMW side, what do you think is missing from the BMW current lineup?
um, well, I don't think anything's necessarily missing in terms of all the slots being filled. They do have a two-seat sports car. They got the M2, they've got the M4, they've got the M5. All the thing. I think the only thing missing is just the desirability for me in
Okay,
terms of the design and the adherence to what I perceive to be BMW's philosophy, right?
okay,
The ultimate
which
driving
is
machine. I think there's just been a
okay.
little bit too much of a shift to fancy technology and
Mhm.
luxury, which is obviously demonstrated perfectly by the fact that the 7 Series, while it does look like a butt, is
Mhm.
so nice, right? Like it's just from a
It's a
luxury
good car.
perspective, it's
Hmm.
unbelievably comfortable and like such an experience to be in the back seat
Hmm.
of,
Hmm.
especially with like the wool upholstery. Oh my god,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
cool. Um, and so like the fact that BMW is doing ultra luxury
Hmm.
best kind of tells me that like there's been a shift that personally I don't agree with, basically,
Yeah.
right? I want to see more of that ultimate driving machine feel back, right? Not
Gotcha.
that the performance isn't there,
Mhm.
but it's just the the chasing numbers, I think, maybe has to stop, including chasing weight. Apparently, this according to be seems to be their current mo. But
There is.
yeah, I think that a little bit more of an emphasis on straight up driver engagement would be what I'd like. That's what I think is missing. Also, styling. I don't want to
Styling. Yeah.
beat a dead
That
horse,
will.
but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's coming. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be better or not, or if it's going to be, different. I mean, it's still, we're not going to see anything new from the new design team until 2029, 2030. So all the new
Yeah.
designs are done until then. Basically, whatever you see coming out, it's been done already. But on the topic of weight and shifting of customer preferences and brands and all of that, I thought about this question as you were talking about a different topic earlier. I was going to bring it up, so now it's a good time. Do you feel like it's the OEMs that drive, the weight of a car, or is it more the customer? Is it the customer's preferences to have more luxury, more standard things in the car driving the weight of the car, or is it still possible today to engineer a car that has everything and is still lightweight, but keeping the package,
Hmm.
priced fairly? I would say.
Yeah. It's a very complex question because like the cars that you see on the road are the intersection of what the manufacturer believes the customer wants and what the team that's actually behind the car feels is the answer to the wants,
Mhm.
right? As well
Okay.
as
Yeah.
maybe some of their personal uh, beliefs in what makes design right, good or bad. So I said, like any car that you see on the road is that. Some of them more so on the side of pure design and performance, while the others are on the side of literally just answering a question for the customer, what the customer wants to buy. Like, here's what market research says they want. Let's literally use AI to develop what is
Yeah.
that car, like fill X niche, which ends up making the cars usually quite boring and crossovery, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a complex question. It's not an easy one to answer, unfortunately.
And what about the M5 weight? I mean, you haven't had a chance to drive the car. I'm assuming you will probably drive it in the near future as well. Um, what do you think is the story there? Because I just did a podcast, last week with my co-host on just the weight of the M5, which was like an hour long, talking about the weight of the M5 and
Yeah,
previous
see,
generations.
what's going to
Should
end up
they've done it like,
happening?
okay,
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, so
no, no, go ahead.
what's going to end up happening is we're all going to drive it, and we're going to go like, doesn't feel like it weighs that much at all,
Yeah.
and that's just the reality of it. Suspension design has come so far, right? Like
Mhm.
if you put that car on 1990s suspension, it like you would
It'll
break and
break.
the nose
Yeah,
would hit the ground,
for
right?
sure.
But like suspension and the way that it can react using electric motors and all of the crazy sway bar technology and anti-roll technology we have now
Hmm.
means that you can make whatever you want feel pretty light. But like for me, the issue with weight isn't when you're on a dry racetrack and exactly the conditions where the car is designed and that particular tire has been co-designed with Michelin or whatever for that car.
Hmm.
It's when you're on a slipperier surface and physics exists and you start to feel the inertia of the car. You feel the weight transfer, like when you need to move it from one direction to another. That's when it doesn't matter how good the suspension design is, eventually weight starts to come in play. And the same goes for uh, consumable component wear, right?
Yeah.
Like every time you add a pound to the car, you have to increase the strength of a bushing so that it doesn't wear out after so many miles. The tires are going to wear out no matter what you do. The brakes are going to take a beating, right? And there's just the article went pretty viral the other day. The Cybertruck owners are amazed that their tires are only lasting
6,000
6,000
miles.
kilometers.
Yeah. Yeah, kilometers.
I'm not amazed,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That makes
Me
the
neither.
perfect sense. That's what's going to happen, right?
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, tire technology is moving so quickly, right? Like every time Michelin puts out a new PS5S, PSS5, whatever it is, it blows our mind, right?
Mhm.
But again, I still think that, and Porsche's continuing to prove this, cars can still be light and modern at the
Mhm.
same time. They do not actually need to be that heavy. Like what did we just drove? We drove the Mercedes CL. Oh God, it was. I didn't like it so much. I can't remember the name. CLS?
Hybrid.
No.
Which
CLA?
one?
CL
Oh, the new one that came out was,
CLE.
was the CLA.
That's the CLE.
Oh,
Yes.
the CLE that replaced the yeah.
Yes, the CLE,
Yeah.
the 53. The
Yeah.
doors on that car, we made a joke about it in the video, but I'm not kidding when I say they are the heaviest doors I have ever operated on a vehicle, period. Right?
Really.
Like they're so heavy that like I promise you that if you weren't paying attention, you know how all the time in your life you're like getting something out of the car and you open a door, you're kind of on a hill and the door closes and bumps you. This door would knock you clean over. It would knock over Dwayne Johnson, right? Like it was outrageously heavy. And my question there is why? Why does it weigh so much? Is it sound insulation? Because if that's the case, you've put the sound insulation in the wrong part. Put it in the floor because there's, that's where a lot of the road noise is coming from. And then you keep the weight low anyway. But like, that's my biggest thing is like cars are way quieter than they used to be. No question. And to be fair, an M2 or an M4 is quieter than a 911 on the highway. The 911, you hear the tires, right? But I still think that BMW has gone too far in the direction of that, right? Bring back the weight a little bit. Cars used to be a lot lighter and they were still nice to drive, right?
Yeah.
So obviously safety's a thing. 100% safety's a thing. But cars have been really safe for quite a few generations now. And, this whole world is very, very complex because, as you know, the amount of regulations and things that the government's putting out, no matter where the cars are being made, result in concessions, no matter what you do in engineering, right? So a lot of it is that. That's why a lot of cars are getting heavier, period. So it's not all the manufacturer's fault. But my question is, why is this car able to be lighter than its competitor? What did they do better? What did they prioritize more than you so that theirs now drives better? It doesn't go through tires and brakes as fast. It handles better, but yours is heavier. Like that's my question. But yes, everything as a result is getting heavier. We can't escape that. That's just the reality.
I think it has to do mostly with the profitability because some brands accept a lower percentage of profitability versus others, and I think it just really comes down to price because I just strongly believe that major German brands can build any car they want to if money no object, or if they would just build a car of their dreams, they will be able to do that. They have the knowledge, they have the skills. So it's not that. It's just balance between everything, regulations, pricing, and all of that. And then you have to cut corners in certain areas. And I've seen that recently with some cars. But on the M5 topic, just to close that off, I drove the car, a pre-production car, on the track. It was fast, ridiculous fast, but it was heavy. I mean, especially since I drove the car back to back with the M4 CS, I could see the difference between a heavy car, and a lightweight car that's made for the track and all of that. So question is, are customers ever going to track the M5? Probably not. Are people going to complain about the weight? For sure. I mean, it's a heavy car and there is no way around it. So I think they're stuck with that for a while.
Yeah.
What's your take on EVs? So we're getting close to the end. What's your take on EVs?
I don't have any problem with EVs. I think that as everyday vehicles, they're superior if you don't account for the inconvenience of the charging infrastructure. Probably wherever you live is probably the case. But when it comes to actually like operating them, I would prefer to drive an EV every day, right?
Same.
They're just nicer to drive. They just are. They like the best example I can think of is most modern cars will get a little bit flummoxed as you're entering a roundabout, right? So like as you kind of like slow down and you look and there's a yield and there's no one coming and then you have to get on the throttle again, that transition from deceleration to acceleration without coming to a complete stop, even the best tuned cars will always kind of struggle a little bit with that. Like what gear should I be in? What gear should I be in? Right? But EVs don't care. The motors wind down, the motors wind up. It's perfectly smooth. So like that sort of everyday kind of usability is extremely, extremely nice. But for me, the issue is just the actual livability of them.
For sure.
If you have a life where you can commute to work and you're 100 kilometers away at the most, then perfect. Charge at home, drive around. I have no problem with them whatsoever. But if you want to go on trips or adventures and you need to go do more than 3 things in a day, if you want to go to Costco and then Walmart and then IKEA and then, you know, like you're just going to have to charge for 45 minutes at some point, right?
Yeah.
And there's not enough chargers. So that's the issue that I have with them currently.
Do you prefer to review EVs equally?
Sorry?
I mean, do you equally prefer to do you equally like to review EVs and ICE cars, or doesn't really matter?
No, I definitely prefer to review ICE cars. There's more to
Gotcha.
talk about from the perspective of
Makes sense.
doing my job and making the video exciting. Unless the EV is like
Sure.
ridiculously fast, right? Then
Most of them are, I guess.
yeah. But usually, unless it's something like the Ioniq 5N, that's a really fun little car.
Yeah, it is.
And there's a lot to talk about. And, you know, they did a really good job dialing that one in to the point where I just thought to myself, I'm like this is better than a lot of gasoline cars. It's more fun. It's more engaging. Right? So,
yeah. All right. 2 final small questions. So one, what's your favorite BMW you've driven recently or in recent memory? And then second one from another brand.
Favorite BMW I've driven recently is...
Or maybe the favorite one from your lineup right now. It doesn't have to be even recently. Whatever.
I think have we released our video on this? I don't think so.
M40i Z4.
That was actually a great car. I really, really liked that one. Wasn't my favorite though. The M4 CS is actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to give too much away because I don't think we've released our video yet.
Gotcha.
But,
okay, not totally fine.
I think that was my most recent favorite BMW. Yeah. And you said most recent favorite from another manufacturer?
Another brand, yeah.
Nothing has really, really stood out to me. I'm actually going to go look at my own YouTube channel right now really quickly, and I'll give me 30 seconds and I'll tell you.
People ask me, oh, you wrote this article last week. I'm like, oh, I don't know which one was last week.
Oh, actually, you know what? Alpine. The Alpine
okay.
A110. We don't get that, but that was just a brilliant little car. I thought it embodied everything that I believe to be still possible when it comes to manufacturing a sports car. Right.
Yeah, it's
like
car.
It's literally rolling evidence that you don't need to make the car too heavy. You can prioritize things like engagement. The ride can still be good. It doesn't have to be loud on the highway to be light. It was just proof to me. It was proof that it's still possible. So to other manufacturers, look at that one. There you go.
Can you import one in Canada?
You can't. You can't. Not yet. No.
You can't. So just like show on display, probably type of car. You can do more than that. Gotcha. It's unfortunate too.
I know.
Cool. All right. I don't want to keep it too long. I always tell our guests, if they have a question for us, you don't have to ask us a question, but if you do have a question for us, we can take that one final question. If not, we can wrap this up. I don't want to keep it too long.
Sure. All right. I got a question for you.
Okay.
What, I follow you on Instagram and I follow you along. So I know some of the things that you say about cars already, but what is your current take on kidney grills? And what do you think BMW could do with them to continue to incorporate the kidney grill, but modernize it? Right?
Tricky one. That is really not an easy question to
answer. Isn't, is it? Because I don't actually know the answer. I don't think making them as big as a house is the answer.
No, definitely not the answer. But here's the problem. So I don't like the kidney grill on the 4 Series. Like, absolutely, I do not. And I made a point to Domagoj also and to people. I would take a photo of the car, like really up close, wide lens, and I'll be like, okay, this is what it looks like. I'm like, this is pretty bad. This is what people see. And then I look at the M3 and M4. And I'm like, okay, acceptable. I would have done it. My idea when the car came out, I said my ideal kidney grill, if you wanted to go a little bit bigger, was on the 3.0 CSL Homage. And the reason why I bring that car up, because you guys were on a podcast with Matt Farah a while back, and you guys were looking up some 3.0 CSL things, and our article came up, the second one with the Homage, which had the smallish, kidney grill still big. And I'm like, that's a good compromise. Not small. The car got bigger. It's in between. It looks great. I'm like, why not? It was there for the taking.
I know.
It was there. You've done it.
Yeah,
it's the same car. So to me, that was that. But now here's the other kicker right now. They're switching now to small grills once again, but they become phygital. So this is a new term that's been invented. It's called phygital, which is, physical and digital. So now you're going to have a kidney grill made out of glass with like lights inside.
Right.
So what do I make of that? I don't know yet. I've seen the concept car. I haven't seen the final car yet. So I don't know. Could be worse, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I get the idea behind it. I get the new class. I get the sustainability topic. I get all of that. It's a great story behind it. They've done a great job telling the story so far, but I need to see it on the road. I do not know. And I made fun of that because they showed me the concept SUV, the new Class X, last a few months ago, and I started the interview with the designer, head of BMW I design. I'm like, you guys went from this to like this tiny grill in the middle with lights. I'm like, once again, no middle ground. I'm like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
going on?
yeah.
Polarizing. So I don't know, honestly. I mean, I'm not a fan of the current big grills, clearly not. It looks fine on some cars like the X7. Okay, I get it. It looks okay, but not on smaller cars, especially not the 4 Series. And now going more horizontal and all of that, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm more concerned about sports cars like the new M3 electric and all of that. How is that going to play? It's still going to be aggressive enough. It's still going to be a recognizable BMW. And that's the biggest thing for me. Do I recognize it as being a BMW?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I don't actually know the right way to do it, but I think as you said that CSL homage, is that what it was? It was CSL homage?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
homage. Yeah, something
Yeah,
like
like
that. Yeah.
that looked the right direction to me. It was like, as you said, it was like it was a well proportioned grill. I don't think it's actually that hard to do but maybe it is. I don't know, but I'd love to see, and the newer Classa is close to it, right? In terms of, looking a little bit like the front of the old E30,
For sure.
right? But I don't know. I think maybe just going back to a slightly smaller version of it is probably the answer, right? They inflated it just too much. And you said too small is also stupid.
Yeah.
So like just put it somewhere in the middle and we'll probably be okay. Like, oh, I don't know, like the M5 CS. Like that looks great. The previous gen M3 and M4, they looked well proportioned, right? The M2.
Yeah.
Right? So
Exactly.
I think that was the max it should be, though, that size of that generation, right?
I agree. And when you have time, you can Google this. It was called the BMW Pininfarina Grand Lusso or Grand Lusso Concept something. It was like a 7 Series Grand Coupe, design language. And if you look at that car, I'm like, okay, that's the 7 Series should have been on the road. You guys had it once again. You showed it. It was amazing. Why not use that design language?
Why not use that?
Sometimes I just, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they make so many great concept designs that could be put into production easily. Like the recent one is the Skytop, the concept one, which they will put into production, but limited. And I'm like, look at that nose. I'm like, it's a Z8 nose with a little bit of modern things. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
just do that. Just do that.
Exactly.
Why not do that?
And you have to do it for all the cars, but do it enough for a few cars that people will be like, okay, BMW can still build cars, they can still do this. And then, give me the obnoxious, X7s and whatever, 7 Series and all of that. So I have a love and hate relationship with that. And I spend so much time on design, honestly. I think they're tired of me talking about design. And I just filmed the 2 Series Grand Coupe, which I can't talk about it. It's going to come out soon, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But Thomas, I really, really, truly appreciate you taking the time talking to me. I know you're super busy. I understand how it is to take an hour from your day to entertain me and my audience.
It's all good. This was cathartic for me. I got a lot of stuff out that's been on my mind.
Okay,
for a while.
That's fine.
This was necessary, I think.
That's good. If you ever need something from us, just please let us know. And look forward to seeing you maybe at future BMW events.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching, for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.